Well, in the spirit of Basho and the ancient Chinese poets, I'll start with a poem in the mode of the Chinese. It's called January Quatrains. After Shiwu. 800 years from you on Red Cloud Peak, I hear your voice rise from rice paper pages. Everything's dew on the grass. Nothing's meant to last. On its way out of the dark, the morning rain light comes up through white clouds. I spent years longing for the retired life. Now it seems too tame. Into the stone Buddha's lap, the dried brown scales fall. The juniper is thick and green above, raindrops blistering the branch ends. For 2 days, the wolf moon's hidden by thick cloud, leaving me only the whole white sky and a leaning pine, dropping long needles to the grass. Since we're in a garden, I'll start with a garden poem, but it's a domestic garden, not this incredible expanse. The title is May, Metaphysical Inbox. Morning's fog in the evergreens, thin as the lining of a dream. Gray brightens to bluish white, becoming faint shapes of clouds. Out of such stillness, the gleaming day. Bees hum in the soft blur of the apple tree. Purple-blue spikes of a juga ramble all through the garden, like the syllables gathering color in my mouth. Anemone, yarrow, nasturtium, mint. The hand is a rake, the foot a hoe, the hip is a bending hinge. Burn pile tended to ashes, the new-mown field in its scythed edges. Here dwells the human will, our brief, happy hubris. As you know, the weeds are going back. Most of this book was written or polished throughout the pandemic when we were assigned to our houses in the lockdown, and it was actually quite a productive time. During 2020, 2021, I was adjusting to having become a widow in 2019. And so many of these poems are elegies, not only for my husband Michael, but for my parents and my uncle, who all died within the last 10, 12 years. Thus, a perishable world. I'll start with, this is part of a sequence of kind of elegies. Old Love. Begin again with the garden, the visible squalor of winter, bare stalks and rumpled leaves. Begin with widow planning, when you wake to his coughing, a cold playing havoc with his ruined lungs. Begin with the morning deck covered in rain, though sun was promised, a mild January day. Consider how fate funneled you here, to these woods, opening onto cobbled shore, to this trampled heart, this love that moves from exasperation to storm to tenderness, remembering its 30-year prophecy, standing then in the doorway of a rented shack. You are the love of my life. His beautiful, gruff body, his gold eyes sirening you in. How here, this late afternoon, rain drumming the roof of the house he built for you, summons a bliss out of the passion that once possessed you. Our Paradise. This is an island poem. In the dusty schoolyard, after the geologist's talk, upthrust of folded rock, carved hidden harbors, these islands made beautiful by fault lines of basalt. My neighbor and I discuss human nature. I tell him we are a species grown unfit for the planet, which will soon shrug us off with the same disdain as when the red ants swarmed up from scrap wood I was tossing from the yard, and I shook them off with a flick of my ankle. Oh, what a piece of work is man. But he was passionate that we can be taught and we can change. The morning news, the evening news, tell of greed at the core, some tyranny in us. In America, we turn off the radio and walk to the beach. Though the sea grows emptier, crab pot buoys strung across the bay, and no salmon leap along the shore, summer's beauty is not yet undone. Pleasure boaters are few in this shaky economy, so the empty shore, these glistening waters, are only ours, until the unmarked black helicopters buzz the treetops, cameras at the open door. That's really true because they used to come around looking for pot fields on Walter's Island. That was the theory of why they were flying so low. This next poem was kind of initiated by this wonderful epigraph from Brenda. I think it was in an essay that she wrote. It is, in forms of life other than human, there is a vitality that isn't trapped in the sorrow. Side by side. All around the clearing, summer's gold fuse firing the alders. The click and sway of juncos gliding to grass light under apple trees. First heat from the wood stove kindled to flame, coffee in the blue cup, while the radio reports police have shot another child, armed only with his blackness, and refugees spilling from flimsy boats mass at ragged borders. Hummingbirds buzz the closed blooms of honeysuckle twining the porch rail. On the trail to the beach, kingfisher, poised on his low branch, chatters before the dive. Walking barefoot along the low-tide selvage, where creamy foam wreathes our ankles, the only footprints on the beach are the ones we are making, that the sea dissolves as if we had never been. I am the proud grandmother of two darling granddaughters. One of them started singing when she was quite little, and we used to make the trip down to Portland to listen to her. And this records a real experience, but it starts with a dream. The title is One Way or Another. As morning slips its light beneath the blackout shades, and the day moon floats above the fence, a gauzy shadow of itself, I rise to consciousness with the image of the calving glacier roiling and melting into a black sea. They say it was the size of Manhattan's island, only taller and all at once, that loss portending what will soon become personal, political. Yesterday, through rain squalls and sun bites, we sped up the freeway after the rock recital. Our granddaughter, age 9, in sequined black jeans, channeling Blondie. One way or another, I'm gonna getcha, getcha, getcha. Electric red guitar slung aside as she grabs the mic and pitches it to us. Later, reading Mowgli stories to her as she collapsed, exhausted in my lap. Her sister, earbudded and screen-glued, tells me, books now are boring. Rebellion is her current ploy against being second-born. And I see the coming world colliding already with our stunned allegiance to the known. One way or another, I'm gonna lose ya. I'm gonna give you the slip. This next one is kind of an elegy for Sam Hamill. In the Anthropocene. Winter doubles down on spring, slaps fists of rain against the marchers, who take to cold streets and chant, their signs laminated against the damp. Some carry slogans written on umbrellas, science, not silence. In the march of ecocide, the small subtractions, one poet's death, loom larger in the scheme of things, where such a voice could wake us before we drown. In the great not knowing, there is only the learning, the path, the way. Sam, you brought those ancient poems across the centuries to show us our time and place, rain-filled mountains and rivers without end, part of a continuum we cannot rip, though we have tried. World without us. No one has told the gulls the human world is doomed. They scrabble loudly over the herring ball, roiling in the sun. But those two crows, crying as they strut the tide line this afternoon, give a piercing, inconsolable moan. The sun doesn't know, nor the tide, or the big combers rolling in to take out fire-ring rocks, flatten the beach, and rearrange the logs. They will keep thrashing the shore long after we are gone, when the sea has moved 100 feet up into the trees and carved out a newer island. Who will miss our loud machines and brutal histories? Will anything miss our beach chairs and the shouts of children playing in the shallows, our tended gardens and tamped roads connecting house to house? The wrens in summer thickets will still be here, I hope, and morning stillness. What of our words, our small, thin songs of praise or love? Leave them to the whales. I hope the whales go on, carrying this longing through the deep, watery canyons of the world, and for the shore, the crow's dark lament. Gathering. This is a poem in 3 parts. 1. At equinox, the slant of light changes, but keeps its strict appointment 7 to 7. Brilliant days still hooked to summer come edged in cold and shadows that cover half the beach. Fall raises the curtain on the losses to come, as crackled leaves curling along the grapevine crumble into the flax and lithidora. The cats bat them across the withered lawn, where walking brings gold spiders down. And summer's toll keeps piling in my heart. My first lover dead from ALS, a dearest friend gutted by pain, gone by her own hand. My love 3 weeks adrift in hospital beds, our nation's fabric fraying at the edges. And now the doctors in their crisp shirts have said the radiation didn't work. The tumor grows, and soon our beloved uncle will need all our care to help him to the door. 2. Carrying her dead calf, the mother orca follows the pod, lifting the body up to trailing whaleboats, tourists, helicopters, to our sightseeing push, our engine clatter, our pollutants filling the water. She bears her calf for 16 days, for 1,000 miles, up into the human world, crying, this, this. She is our activist in grief and rage, carrying a dying planet on her rostrum. 3. September coals fall to ash in the creaking stove, and the days are measured out in chores. I've gathered 5 bins of apples to the press, 2 dozen jars of cider canned, and still one tree so laden I can't pick them all myself. I gathered, too, some sunsets, burning a fierce horizon, gathered in a full moon, washing squares of light across the floor. gathered morning fog in the clearing, to store this forest silence for our darkening time. Reunion. This is recounts a family gathering that was a kind of a wake before the death of my husband, when the whole family gathered a few months before he died, in Manzanita, Oregon. Reunion. Ocean waves wash in without ceasing, curl and break, sunlit blue or grayed out in the rain. They collapse on themselves and dissolve in thin foam on the beach. It's easy to let them be background noise, enjoy the wide view without really feeling their unrelenting pulse pummel the shore. In the goodbye bear hug from your dear nephew, suddenly the tears press out. Why is it only in the kindness of others this grief rises to the surface? A glance, a hand squeeze, the more than expected embrace from your young oncologist catches me out, and I'm pulled into the undertow. In the sweetness of this gathering, your children and grandchildren, your siblings, your nephews, the whole root ball of ex-wives, half-brothers, near sisters, it seems no one but me shies away from a straight-on look at your coming death, though all week the sea has chanted it in my ear. Lament. The August beach is as you left it, hung with absconding shadows across the afternoon. The sun moving south over horizon islands. Yellow jackets busy in the sand, mining the detritus in the line of seaweed the tide left. No agates or feathers call to me today, as they did to you always. Just the rattle of colored stones, the greens and grays, whites and golds, shifting under my sandals, and the piercing squawks of seagulls over a herring ball in the bay. Out of summer's perfect and lonely afternoon, a moment returns to me from long ago. Taking your hand as we moved in a festival crowd, I let fall away every contentious word, every argument, letting go purely into the love you offered. Did I give you what you needed in the end? And two more. This one is for my granddaughters. Bequeath. I bequeath you the house your grandfather built, its dry shingles and fading gray trim. Bequeath you the clearing, early flurry of birds in the weed trees, white fir and maple intruding on the light. Bequeath you the wide yard of grass and the finicky mower, the apples, the blueberries, the grafted plum that never bears, the well and water tank, the black generator spewing exhaust. Bequeath you the shed's clutter of tools and useful junk, under powder post beetles, small piles of sawdust, the chainsaw in its orange case, its rusty teeth and special file. Bequeath you the trail to the beach and the August ground wasp's ambush, the tent platform and sunset bench, boards slowly sinking into the mossy bluff, the red rubber boat and its bellows pump, the blue truck weighted with sandbags against spring mud. Bequeath you summer days on a low-tide beach, eagle feathers and agates, barnacles and muck. Bequeath you the midnight sky in June, its smear of stars, old chaos and the given light. And one more to perhaps leave us on a slightly more upbeat note. And also is a seasonal one since we're heading this way towards solstice. The light slides gray above the trees, hesitates in the tips of fir. There was once a forest here. Brightens with the stippling rain on porch and roof. Surely you have watched these winter mornings, your heart scoured out with grief after a sleep-starved night, waking again to the corrupted wave that has broken your country. Hunched crows hold the power lines above the street. Yet you are warm in your bed, your love dreams beside you, morning's minuet plays against the glass. The courtyard Buddha wears so lightly his mantle of mist. Bladed leaves of the rhododendron swell and shine. Soon the planet will turn again, in the star-strewn dark, bearing its cargo of hope. Thank you.
I want to read some new things, newish, and maybe this is, I guess, maybe an elegy sandwich, because I'm going to start with some things that are not elegy and then bring you back to the elegiacal. So this is the hope, instead of blankets for you, that I can help keep you warm with this little poem about the sun called Jaune, which is French for yellow. Picture this, a lemon tree holding its fruit for your eye. Wind blows through. Little suns guard the heat as juice for some tomorrow. Concentration states abide inside utopia, inside tradition. Compact as mustard seeds, visceral as time. Internalize the yellowing, just like internalize Bhakti's coat. Invent a dryad bending from leaf to light. You see the yellow trumpet flowers down the street, shameless pendants pouring dew onto a carpet of lime green flowers, glowing as fog lifts, a gray diamond that reveals a day behind it when the wind unzips the sky. Perhaps you dream awake. Your eyes flutter like the leaves. Tiny tom-toms of REM turn you inside out at once. You hop the carriage that issues from any tree, ride to its branches that dissolve too slow to see a bardo rooted in earth. It presents itself as forever, but isn't. The wind reminds you, as awkward leaves fall in yellow on the ground of our being that isn't what it seems, but burnished for a moment in this picture that holds you above it all, yet not. Okay, so that might be it for my nature poetry. I just want to thank Paul and Zach and Veronica and all the amazing volunteers and all of you. I love being part of this tribe, this Matt, hello, Gabriella, this tribe, this cult, this rock band, this rhizome called Cascadia Poetry Festival. Good God. Okay, so this one's called Torsion, and it's a little thing that was just published by Axon International Journal. It comes out of Australia this summer. The next two are in that. Torsion. Speckled drops of late summer announce all coming departures. I was wrong, this is elegiacal. Speckled drops of late summer announce all coming departures, an asphalt of memory covered in leaves of the future. We sense an escapism in this gap, even as miles below us the trees and days char. Forest sirens, almost nightly, make our skin feel paper thin. We are afraid of ourselves. My dog sniffs the unknown, seeing winter's approach in late summer. Branches of the departed whisper, "It's gone." August. The throat of time closes in this sheltering pause. I would tap the lost door, but I partition the night in servitude to the day. Now I am lost, like that trembling boy. He has his foot in the drawer. What we mine can be felt as presence or emptiness, depending on the parallax. Either way, it's a metaphysical menace. Try shoring up the asides when the brook is temporary, when there is nothing central left to say. And in the same journal, Axon, the asterisk of time. Getting weirder. Years foliate the mind, filibuster the forgotten. The wolf is asleep behind the trees. This time we're asleep. Ancient ferns cackle, and the asterisk of time clenches its belly muscles. Mysterio releases dopamine. The dream is still at the bottom of the lake. Its mind listens through the years, even if you forgot it's there. The sinews of the forest are more flexible than your schedule. The plums of regret are still too hard to pluck. I'll turn on the light of reason after lunch. A clattering in the kitchen means philosophy isn't irrelevant on weekends. Blind solipsism, I frame you. Instant of the other, listening. Simple, past tense. I'll brush up against my own curious herds of elk peering through the window. Cracks of yellow light between the trees implies fellowship. It will darken, then return, reminding us to laugh at solid things, as if. Even that chainsaw won't last forever. I'm leaving something behind each moment and forgetting an appointment with irrelevance. And this is a little poem that I wrote in my sleep-deprived state right before the first meeting of the community of writers in 2023, and Brenda happened to be my workshop leader. So in that state of mind, here it goes. The Iliad of this morning. The Iliad of this morning settles in like an exhaustion flavor. But where you sense an approaching phalanx sweating like a trove of unwanted heat waves, snow crust in June. Little deafening gift someone will paint someday as a mural, smarter, maler than a mere lyric. Frozen in disbelief, the mountain's green faces mock the apocalypse, a bad movie we pay to see because we know the ending. Smug as we melt down the aisles of the Freudian theater, Fort Daw, I'll tell you what that is at the end, making a gotcha game of existential terror. Throw our parents down the stairs of childhood on a string, reel them back. Gone. There. Meanwhile, California shapes itself around a new old idea of itself. We suspect our catchments of unlikely water are a brief goad. Drink, then get real for the coming India. The sonic Texas tells all. Oh, we're fine. Just a rosy-fingered dawn unbanned, for now. Withering in the spongiform mosaic of denial, it feels like 120 degrees, NPR says. That sounds like something NPR would say. Somebody owns the grid. Somebody left the cake out in the sun. God, I made Paul laugh, cool. The irony of being there in the future without our faces, like anonymous tufts of grass in the cracked dirt of possibility. What do we have to lose? I'm sure we can find somebody to transplant equatorial species to the Tibetan plateau, bone compost to hold in the 7 rivers of Asia. Sinews show us how to dig down to the shy aquifer, bear the dry days with our heads held high, like bare-naked ladies on tall leafless stems, just daring anyone who would rather not. So this is a poem called Not Narrative, K-N-O-T, and it's part of a book I've been working on, which is just bedeviling the hell out of me. It's a book that I'm hoping to hand over to Greg sometime. About my sister, Cleo. It's more, it's more like personal documentary poetry, focusing around events of her life, like when she had a baby when she was 14, another when she was 19, and when our family went to Wyoming, and then she ran off to Seattle and joined a band called Butterfat and started starving, and then we'd come home, and she was very, very, always very mythical to me because she's 14 years older than me and just amazing. And then she's kept attracting weird relationships. So it's a book about domestic abuse, which everybody loves, right? And but she was an amazing stained glass artist. She just went through a lot, including when she was in Seattle, hearing something out of her door when she was in the neighborhood of University of Washington, a sound. She went and stayed with a friend, and that night Ted Bundy's first victim was nabbed, and she fit the profile because she had long dark hair. And I hate to even say this because it evokes that asshole, but so I'm not going to read you that poem, okay? I'm going to read you other poems, and not that one. But this is the one called Not Narrative, K-N-O-T. Imagine a song's end, a Gordian knot tied to an ox cart of presumption. What are we running toward or from? Narrative, self-replicating in its need to not disappear, forgets to step out of the story into a corridor of new friends who might have something to say about that. Tell me once, shame on you. Tell me twice, I may go all Phrygian on you. Cut the metaphor. Thwack! Sorry. tired of its constraints. Domestic abuse, like teen pregnancies, like abortion, like alcoholism, like eating disorders, are not what we signed on to read. Depression, maybe. War, sure. But no resources to remove the landmines, much less make a map. So, when you walk toward us, you're on your own. And we don't know you well enough to eulogize yet. So you might consider a new knot, like automated jobs, highways sinking into tundra, immigrant detention, or even Florida. But Christ on a crutch, I wouldn't talk about the family. So then, the sad thing happened when she was 69. She fell down some stairs, and friends of hers came and said, everyone was telling me about what was really going on behind the scenes with her husband, which I won't go into, but she was an amazing artist. She started I'm trying to show her in her better light. She started an art school in New Zealand, was a major stained glass artist there. But this poem is about the aftermath of that fall. The Mind of One Rose. Revisit the room outside where you, ambient fog, hover just off the sharded shore. Perpetual guest arriving anytime. Foghorn bellows in the rose. Its tight folds turn crimson as quiet scream deepens to color we long for. You are everywhere, as thought is, running like the bird fountain through levels in a loop. It looks like plenitude. Someone fills it unseen each day. The birds don't know. Cracked motors, white butterflies dance around red-tipped jade. A squid garden of aloe, balms for the day. Without your phone call, there is your name and stories with gaps like a missing step. On the staircase, you crying on the landing. Language and thought shattered into shards. Beautiful and terrifying, but in a modernist way. The listener filling in fragment song with meaning. Love, longing, horror, sorrow. Where then is the fog to soak the succulents, the pumpkins, the mind's dried rinds, waiting for the Nietzschean fog of forgetfulness, the Keatsian mist of remembrance, that are themselves and or that are metaphor as the rose and its screaming heart needs or absorbs projections, our projections. A darkened theater co-ops the day like the compressed gallery in your skull. The stems of you, branches of you, petals of you grow now in the mind's garden, various as grieving is. Plots are seeded by chance mostly. Baby birds in the lemon tree bring us back, sharpen senses that missed across the surface of every green thing, rather than entering into the mind of one rose and its unheard spiral tightening over emptiness like a baby's fist. A morning in Bellingham, 2023, I return with your ashes. So she used to live there, and I visited her when I was 11, and there's a whole poem about that, but it's cool. Thin sprouts of rain outside Hotel Leo window make memories room cozy until I enter it. I haven't found your cottage where I once visited you. I was a baby hippie on the cusp of teen when one becomes a whole new person, like someone just dumps an urn of childhood into a frothing wake of river. Oops, the you we love is lost. When the child you were was dumped into the wake, a baby emerged from the precise spot of relinquishment, like Aphrodite from the froth of neutered Kronos. Dad was Kronos. When Mom told him his 14-year-old was pregnant, he ripped off his watch, threw it against the wall, stopped time. Everyone frozen in that moment forever. Kronos, chronological time. Christmases we recounted the years, stunned stuck as the watch's second hand. Kronos' dad, tossed into a sea he never emerged from. In Greek mythology, God's babies are often placed into human arms. They find out later they are special. A baby from a baby makes a continuum. They bob down rivers away from families who bury grief's umbilical in the silted banks. A whole lifetime on river's edge, knowing something is growing in the silt like a tether, a baby snake coiled in its desire to slip its own knot, dislodge a pebble of memory. Something relinquished below the black stew pot of shame. Our bodies can't help what they carry sometimes. Punishment lingers in cellular walls that thrum with enclosure. Unseen above, a kind rain absolves just outside the river's window pane, moving over you like years. Today, the sky grows kind with pregnant clouds and a mixed blue sky, waits for us to walk into what has been waiting all these years, even though you're gone. Anyone can be dislodged at any time. I've come to dislodge parts of you into Bellingham Bay. The day is seagull colored. Gray wings spread across the bay where yellow beaks and paddle tips peek out like the fickle sun. Orcas Island in view, but not in reach today. The idea being that there will be a next time, but don't presume. The saunterers and their dogs, the runners in their serious stride, like it's their last chance before winter sets in, forcing us inward to our own rivers. I release you. An ash cloud in a nook of driftwood and rocks, an art piece made of change. You touch your surroundings, then float away. And thank you so much. I forgot to tell you what Fort Daw is, but I could do that some other time. I'm just going to read a teeny weeny part of what's my favorite poem, which is when my mom died, the songs that objects would sing. And I'm just going to do a little bit of it, okay? It came out when I was from the Redwoods in Santa Cruz Mountains where I live. You know what the bardo is, right? In Tibetan Buddhism, 49 days in limbo. Okay, so right after you die. We were there together, the songs that objects would sing. We were there together in a placement against all odds. What do we know about starting from scratch, in a bed, in a belly, in a bardo? No I there yet, but reaching. Samsaric portal. Countless eons? Better breathe and forget about it. So, I had you for a lifetime and now cannot imagine what next. Read a book about what happens? Subscribe to a theory about how we'll meet again? Tired of all who pretend to know. I feel you in the glint of objects sometimes. That's all I know. That shimmer down the length of spiderweb, that omniscience in the chandelier, unseen till now, but for a flickering instant, something. All is projection and mind play. I need you or stay, and the brass goes back to being just brass. If I let you watch me and loosen the grasp, I may see a twinkling again. Who knows? To say to my young daughter, watch or listen if you want to know what life is to say life is anxiety. Dog leaping toward bird sound, bird leaping from dog sound. Who sits absorbed inside sound's centerless, edgeless surround? And there's stuff about John Cage. I'm just going to skip that. I was not yet a warrior and am not, mostly. The world does not end, says a poet, and I say, which world? When I held you as you lay dying when you died, when I held you in my arms, I had a glimpse of the warrior we all are, buried beneath the dream of permanence. Oh, Mom, those fingers curved over my hand. I can feel your skin too tight over bones, like leather gloves left out to dry after a rainstorm. The piano you thumped till it turned into story, then the fingers dried up from disuse. And yet to see them, fragile and beautiful, pink half-moon fingernails, artist's hands lying over my own, is to sense beginnings and to have a song I could play one day. The shame of beauty, it does not know it will not last forever. Its eyes grow sad as it sees this, and then ripen underground into jewel-colored yams that will feed us one day. Neurosis of Stellar's J, its matrix shriek going out in all directions from a single point, an asterisk of sound, no apperception there. Who are the inward focused here, the cochineal among such racket makers, dipping inside to bear witness to one's own wells? How to re-enter the conversation with objects that bear your subtle signature, your cinematic fictions I sew from scratch in this song-strafed foliate mosh pit. When I touch the objects that bring you to mind, touch upon them when I touch your dust, your crumbs, when I, like an archaeology of closed eyelids, candles once lit and frozen, the angel's lips open in a song she is about to, but has never and never will sing. The mute acceptance of objects to receive our fragment song. A circle free of dust once we lift, and by lifting enter the story, replacing the clean halo with a mess of fictions that startle us back to grace. Wrapped, we listen to what never was and will be again. Okay, thanks.
Encounter. The double-crested cormorants were scarfing too many salmon, said the feds, so they shot a lot and oiled their nests on the dredge spoil islands that they had made. The birds moved on, nesting under the big bridge instead. Now, when they fly out, some get hit by traffic. But why so many? I was lamenting the 35 dark carcasses plastered to the road on my previous crossing, as I turned onto the bridge again, girded for another grim toll. But what's this? There, ahead of me, a brown flapping in the roadway, like a bat that can't take off. It's a cormorant, fledgling, hence the brown, stuck on the bridge, crosses lanes, tries to get over the railing, but can't. I have only seconds to decide. Once I'm past, there will be no coming back. Soon it will be crushed like all the others. So I stop in the middle of the bridge, the great lumbering motorhome on my ass. Semis and cars and trucks stacking up behind it all the way to Washington. Flick on the blinkers, jump out, and am not yet crushed myself. The oncoming lane whizzes past at 60. Engines idle behind me. The baby flaps. As I approach, it paddles farther along the rail. Will I have to chase it all the way across the river? But no. I near. It stops, turns, faces me, wings spread, bill agape and crying. Who knows how much damage that beak can do? But there is no damn going back now. I move in, pause, and pounce. Cormorants work for Japanese fishers, rings around their necks so they can't swallow. So I reckon those necks must be strong. I lunge, grab it by the throat, and hold its spear away from my eyes. My other hand under its butt, like you do with a baby. That's when I look right down into that deep pink maw, black hole, and into its terror-stricken, shiny eyes. What now, we both ask. The wings fold in, as if secure, or maybe resigned that all is lost. I lift the bird, maybe half the weight of my cat, up, over the rail, and launch it into the air, above the Desdemona sands and the wild river rushing past, on an ebbing tide. It falls toward the water, then spreads, and flies back under the bridge. I wobble back to my car. Before climbing in, I flash a big thumbs up to all those behind me, and no one returns the finger. Nobody leans on the horn, not even one. I shake for the next 2 hours. Now I know why so many dead birds deck the bridge. And every time I cross, I beg not to see another one. Stranded there, flapping, because who knows whether I'd have the guts to stop again. Thank God the next one I saw made it over. I'm shaking remembering it. Now, I'm so happy, Paul. One of my favorite things about this fest is that the elders and the young meet here and mingle, and nobody patronizes anybody else. And that doesn't happen very much anymore. Not many places where we get together over the ages. As Roxi already indicated, for those of us who are elders, even though we are younger than we used to be, the challenge is falling. Falling is the enemy, as so many know. This is called Going Down Again. As a man who sinks in water, I have never been gravity's friend in open air. I remember falling out of a locust tree at 10, stealing magpie eggs. Off bicycles, of course. Hard on tailbone in the Fox Aurora, tripped by a girl. And again on rock at Boreas Pass. From a ladder, raking my forearm raw on oaken bark. Stumbling over Logan curbstone, shaking the pavement with the force of my fall. And once, almost over backwards, under heavy pack on sharp pumice ridge in the dark divide. I never liked pratfalls in comedy acts. Feel physical pain before butt meets dirt when it isn't even my butt. And for this reason, I clamber, not climb up mountains. For this reason, I go slowly over broken ground. It is good that my bones are like those of Titanotheres, the way my body craves the earth. Yesterday, in Billy Meadows, my foot found a stick, end on. Pole vault came to mind as I shot up, out, and down. Landed on cheek with a crack that I took for bone, or lens at least. Lay there, taking stock, then, daubing a little blood, stood and shook it off. Happy to be back up one more time. No, don't, please. Thank you so much, but save the time. Rare worm doesn't spit or smell sweet. Thus spake USA Today, when the Palouse giant earthworm turned up again after 20 years of absence. Well, not really absence. They were down there all along, relaxing into their flaccid longitude deep underground. Their cousins, the Oregon giant earthworms, had been missing even longer. Old lore said the Palouse giant earthworm smells like lilies. Old lore said it spits and stretches up to 6 feet long. Not so, said USA Today. These were only footlongs. No spit, no sweet scent. Kind of like finding Bigfoot, and he's only 5'10" with 9B trotters. I don't know about the spitting, but what if you were lost for 20 years and then found and weren't the same as everyone expected? What if they all found out that you don't smell like lilies after all? The girl with cockleburs in her hair. We were talking about how children don't get out anymore. She showed me her daughter on her cell phone. Big pout and 4 big burrs caught up in her hair. That girl, I said, is going to be okay. From Chinook and Chanterelle with my late wife Tia's wonderful woodcuts of Chinook and Chanterelle on the cover. Tia and I met in a mushroom class in 1967, and she was the best chanterelle hound in 7 counties or more. I would not have wanted to be a chanterelle anywhere near Tia. So the title poem I wrote for her when she first became ill, this is for Tia. What gifts these are from river and woods, these coral ones, muscled strumpets plucked from the fisher's nets where the shrunken runs still shine, and these golden ones, fluted trumpets, pinched from the forest floor where the second growth hemlocks still stand. Surely we are unworthy of such as these. But if enjoyment of succulent flesh is any mitigation, if the tongue's fierce possession of taste can be extenuation, if the way we chew and praise and slurp and swallow and, say it, worship this fin and stipe, these silver scales and meaty caps, can sing the hard shimmer in the stream, can cry the soft glimmer on the mossy floor, can save us. If these gestures make any difference whatsoever, well, maybe we deserve them after all. So I have my grief poems for Tia in this book, though it's not a grief book. They're short and they're not very many. I'll read you one, and this is toward the end of the first year, and my grief was still sharp, of course. We've heard a lot about, that's the other thing about elders, is they lose their dearies sometimes. And we each have. But this is one that was toward the end of the first year, and I will share it. Its wonderful title that I could not have come up with or improved upon was given me by the painter and writer Neil Johansson on Bainbridge Island, who was the artist for both of these book covers, the rainbow bear and the snakes. The poem is called Heavy Metal Band. When I took my wedding ring off at last, my friend said, "You're removing heavy metal from your hand." And he was right. Never has a finger felt so stripped, as if it were my hand, not my heart, that was bereft. But when it was gone, that pale and dented finger stripped of its heavy metal band, it was my heart that came free. And that was for Neil. So thanks, Paul, for quoting the pollination, recent pollination poem. Here's an earlier pollination poem. I've been involved in conservation of butterflies and other invertebrates for well over 50 years, and monarchs a lot, of course. Las Monarcas. Thank you, you two dear women, for those wonderful monarch poems yesterday. That made the whole trip worth it. This is not about monarchs. This is about pollinators writ large, and it is called Pollination. The rainforest thing is getting me again. Dehydrating my frog that lives in my throat. Along with a few toads and boogers and bacteria. Songs. Here's a little song. Pollination. Night blooming Sirius opens white flowers to tippling bat, like petticoats parted for a ravenous lover. Fringed prairie orchid takes the tongue of hawk moth, gives back nectar, so that inconstant, impassioned hawk moth carries fringed prairie sperms to the next tasseled bloom. Bog orchids entrust their pollen to mosquitoes. That's one reason, at least, for their existence. White-winged doves drink the nectar of saguaros, ensuring purple fruits to come. Hummingbirds, of course, pollinate 1,000 plants, Aquilegia, Delphinium, Fuchsia, and Ribes, just for starters. But it's the bees who move the bulk of those golden grains, bees and wasps and flies and bee flies and hoverflies and butterflies and the many moths who service the night bloom. Pollination, how flowers fuck through their happy go-between the insects, birds, and bats. How plants make it through the night. Now, I often read that at pollination festivals near children, and I have to, Bowdlerize my poem. Not with you. So thank you for that. I have a collection called The Tidewater Reach 44 Lower Columbia River Poems with the wonderful photographs of Judy Vandermeiden. They sold out here, so I don't have it, but a couple of them are reprinted in The Last Man in Willapa, and I have one of those to read. It's called The Cottonwoods in March. Willow Grove. Cottonwoods in March, Willow Grove. After the dance, you drove out Willow Grove, across the bridge, beyond the town, between river and backwater slough. The warm night beguiled the cottonwoods all along the bank, just breaking bud, just putting out their soft green tongues, all sticky with the brown paste of balsam, once called the balm of Gilead. Both of you taken by the cloying scent far beyond sense. You knew you shouldn't park, but you did, and stroked each other's faces with the soft green spears, cheeks, eyelids, right below the greedy nostrils, lips, lacerating your hearts beyond repair. A pleasure so intense, the two senses least used, smell and touch, that you could never, ever speak it as it was, barely even kissed. But you both knew, didn't you, that the kisses would come, and you could only hope they would match the sweetness of those cottonwood strokes on Willow Grove that night. The woman I wrote that for, I hadn't seen for 50 years, and she came to a reading of mine the other night. It was very sweet. I said, "Have you read the poem?" She read the poem. We're going to have coffee. Don't dare do it in March by the Cottonwoods. I'm trending on down now, but a few more little ones. What if we had a poet for president? What do you think?
No.
Well,
Depends.
save that thought for a minute. I'm going to read from The Last Man in Willapa, published by Texas Tech University Press last year. I'm going to read the title poem that Neil took his design from for the cover. It's called The Last Man in Willapa. I live in the Willapa Hills, Southwest Washington. Before, there were bears. Then there was Weyerhaeuser, Crown Zellerbach, and hounds. The hound hunters and timber beasts wiped out the black bears of Willapa, who had a taste for sweet cambium of Douglas fir. But when the companies sold out and hounds were banned, the bears came back. More and more folks saw black bears in Willapa. Bird feeders went down. Rumors flew. The years went by. Everyone was seeing bears. Everyone, that is, except for him. He saw a puma. He saw bobcats. He saw otters, mink, and muskrats. He even saw that elusive rodent, the mountain beaver. But bears, he couldn't spot one for the life of him. And then one day, the hired hand ran in and said, "I met a bear out back, a big one." They found its splats of wild honeycomb and pears. Next day, the last man in Willapa to see a bear saw the bear beside his mailbox, waiting for delivery, or for him for a change. There's the bear by my mailbox. He might have been stoned, I wasn't. Or she. Okay, what if we did have a poet for president? You ever think about that? Well, we did, and we almost did. Again, not lately. This was written in 2018. What if we had a poet for president? We had a well-published one, in Jimmy Carter. Serious poet. Washington, Adams, Lincoln, and Obama also wrote verse in office. We could have had a good one in Gene McCarthy, Chicago, 68. Then the war would have ended 5 years before it did. There would have been no Watergate, and who knows what else. Poets have seldom called the shots. Netzahualcoyotl was poet and ruler of Texcoco in Mexico, but his verses did not prevent the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. Look where his odes got Neruda and his boss, Allende, prosody being no match for the CIA. Even so, imagine how humane ideals might reign with Whitman in the White House, or how hope and wild geese might thrive on a Dickinson Oliver ticket. How the world might make sense if Snyder ruled the roost. Fucking A, huh? But what do we get instead? The inarticulate dregs of an incurious mind, the bottom of the barrel, 140 characters deep. And I was lucky to do something like this, Paul, in Havana, with the Poets Union writers, together with a group of American poets. For a week, we got together and did this sort of thing in Spanish and English with translation, and it was a ball. So I want to read two little poems from the Cuba poems, which are in this book. The first one is called Among the Writers. And you might relate, some of you academics and others who listen to academics might relate to a line in here. Wait, that was that one. Sorry. 34. Cuban and American writers sit down together in two facing rows of square tables, each a display case of fossils, formations, minerals, metals, regalia, and souvenirs of La Revolucion. Tall shelves hold Núñez Jiménez's manuscripts on one side, his bound books of photographs on the other. Che, Fidel, and their comrades in arms peer from framed black and white pictures on both walls. They had met in this room often. We take turns reading our poems and papers up front. Armando, MCs, comments on each one the way they do here. The poems go mostly in their own language, taken for their rhythm and flow. Luis translates lucidly, but a long paper on gender in Cuban fairy tales is a challenge. To be honest, we all find it a challenge in either language. But then, from between all the lines of arid scholarship, comes this. I used to live in a pumpkin inside a pumpkin patch. And this, make your baskets, fill them up with butterflies and fireflies. Wait for me, and we will make a good party. And frankly, I would have come to Cuba just for that. And the shortest poem in the book, it's called The Bats of Havana. The bats of Havana whisk past my shoulder, leaving echoes of ink and gauze. And finally, to swimming with snakes. Thank you, Watershed, and all of you for listening to Jim and me. Agua. Swimming with snakes. Most of the snakes we see are dead, flat in the road, or maybe just the head clipped by a tire, like the turquoise-bellied beauty of a garter on my mail walk today. Or the many black-tailed rattlesnakes that night between Hachita and El Paso, most long backs broken, a few of them whole and alive, so alive as I and a Border Patrol agent scurried them off the road. And often, when we do spot a wild snake, it's so quick, no time to enjoy its fluid slither, like that really big western diamondback I nearly trod on in the shade of a New Mexico cedar. We did the old evolutionary dance as it rattled, and I leaped, launching in one direction as it coiled deeper into the other. Which is why it was so sweet to see, wading out of Joseph Creek, that swirly little snake swimming past my ankles. Together we climbed the pebble beach and then basked companionably, the snake between my feet. I took its brown reticulation for a gopher snake until I saw the viper head and two tiny rattles, a third just growing in. Both of us warm and dry in the sun, we parted amicably, never to forget, on my part, that chummy swirl together through Joseph Creek that day. Polar bear bites back. Mammals have been in the newspapers lately. Headline, many large animals are endangered. This poem, by the way, is for Jane Goodall, who fought the bushmeat trade in chimpanzees. That was one of her many campaigns. Mammals have been in the newspapers. Headline, many large animals are endangered. Not really news, except why. Bushmeat. People are eating them. Another report described a mass invasion of polar bears in Novaya Zemlya, Russia, eating garbage, threatening kindergartners, terrorizing the people, some of who called for the starving bears to be culled. Overpopulation is the cause of the first condition, global warming the second, as if they were different things. Bushmeat didn't come up in the polar bear story. But if they should start culling Russians for lunch, could anyone really blame them? After all, everybody's got to eat. And with just 30,000 polar bears in the world and 9 billion of us, well, fair is fair. And I'm going to omit the pastry suite. One is called cinnamon roll, the other is called the butterhorn. You may read them yourself for breakfast. and I'm going to omit a couple of others so that we can finish appropriately. But I do have two more poems for you. And one of them is called, it's a two-part poem, The Traffic of the Jays and the Pigeons. And I'm doing this now because this is exactly what's happening at my house, Sweet Park, in the Willapa Hills right now, because it is a good mast year, which means the acorns in the oaks. I have the biggest red oaks in Washington at my place, planted almost 150 years ago, and they're full of acorns this year. And the Steller's jays and the native fan-tailed pigeons come to them in great numbers. So here's for the season, and a benediction or a valediction for our time together, coming together for our sustenance, the traffic of the jays and the pigeons. Traffic of the jays. Steller's jays nest uphill a few hundred yards where the summer is cooler in the conifers. Even dog-hair hemlocks of 20, 30 years will do. So summer here below is free of their sapphire flash. But come the acorns of autumn, come back the jays. One September morning, awaken to that wicked bray that says, let the traffic commence. And for the next several months, a lively back and forth takes place as seen from bed, from porch, from yard. Jays swoop across the sky when they fly, one short dip from oak to maple to hornbeam, from beech to cascara to cherry, and then sit, resume, repeat, usually one by one, unless an owl appears, when all jay hell breaks loose in the woods. They traffic in acorns, these blue jays, then stick around seeking them all winter long. Why bother to watch the same birds over and over? Swoop, swoop, swoop. Because blue never gets old? Because every action deserves a reaction? Or because really, what better have I got to do? That's kind of zenny. And the pigeons. And there's an epigraphogram. Brenda, where's Brenda? Graph. Epigraph. Epigram is kind of a forgettable saying, right? Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I don't forget it.
I'll never forget again. Nor you. Nor will I ever forget you, Brenda.
Thank you. I'll never forget you either.
The epigraph is from Ralph Humer, Virginia, 1615. Flockus in the air so thick that they have shadowed the sky from us. Of course, the passenger pigeons. Now the red oaks and the white oaks stand nearly stripped of fruit, so heavily laden this fall, the kind they call a good mast year, that the Steller's jays and the band-tailed pigeons have eaten nothing but acorns for weeks. Such a bird, this big native pigeon, the definition of dove gray overall, plumbeous hood, vinous iridescent breast, bright white halo slipped down around its neck, and that broad pale band in the trailing tail. So big it makes 4 times the meal of a mourning dove. I know, when the Cooper's hawk drove one into the wall, murder by house, I plucked it right away from the ground and sauteed it in red wine. Yum! A dozen acorns in crop, gizzard, stomach. No wonder it couldn't get any lift. Silent and glide, the bandtails explode into flight when the Coopers, or I, alarm them. That great echoing boom of 200 big wings beating those fat, oak-fueled breasts. I watch them from my bed in the early dawn, from the porch in the afternoon, all over the place, all day long. When Ralph Humer wrote that the passenger pigeons have shadowed the sky from us, he described a scene one day to be lost forever. I will never know such a thing outside my mind's eye. Passenger pigeons are all gone, and bandtails can't do it for hours at a time. But in a good mast year like this one, they do shadow the sky from us for blessed seconds at a time, over and over again. It's the best I'll ever get, and I'll take it. They make me happy, the bandtails. To see such abundance in this day and age is a benison, a hope, and a joy. Not a common bird, need mineral licks to make their pigeon milk. They are no longer legal game birds, unless you hit them with your house. And one final short poem. This is for quite a few of you who missed my sex poem sequence last night in the pub. I do have one more, and it ends the way I like it, so. This one, yes. So bear up, not down. It's called If Humans Had Spermatophores. Now, lots of animals deliver the sperms from the male to the female, or in the case of slugs, in both directions, because every animal is both. So all the banana slugs both contribute sperms and receive sperms, bear the young. How egalitarian is that? How evolved? Jane Goodall asked me once, what if humans behave more like bonobos than chimps? So this isn't, do you know about bonobos? They basically fuck their brains out all day long, happily, and they don't war as chimps do. It's a really big difference in two nearby species. So it can be done. Not necessarily that way, but this is another one of those speculations which I will leave you with. Bit graphic. So the spermatophore is a little bag of sperms delivered into the cloaca or vagina, or in butterflies, a wonderful organ called the bursa copulatrix. Isn't that a beautiful name? Brenda, you're always talking about and using scientific names and beautiful names from nature, and you say don't shy away from them. And that is so true in your own poem about Celestrina echo, the echo azure. Yes, thank you. They fly here in the spring. Saw one at my house 3 days ago, the second brood. But all of those butterflies delivered the sperms into this wonderful organ called the bursa copulatrix in the female. It means the purse of love. If copulation can be equated to love. That's a laugh line, So if humans had spermatophores. If humans had spermatophores, zygotes would be ziplocked. Gametes gift-wrapped. Chromosomes contained in shrink-wrapped valentines. If germ cells merged this way, sperms delivered in packets of promise, brighter than anything from burpees, it would be impossible to spill your seed. If men made spermatophores when they shot their wad, then there would be no wet spot on the bed. Rubbers would be redundant, since cum would come in cellophane. If love arrived in shiny bubbles, prizes packed in sheer balloons, genes seeking genes would ply the deeps in silken submarines. And birth, that would be a burst of butterflies.
Can we bring Roxi and Alicia up here? And have a hand for our three poets. Yeah.